Hi, and welcome to today's episode of the Plot Luck podcast, where we talk about all our favourite books. We'll be posting twice a month. The first episode will be a spoiler-free version, where we just talk about the book in general and let you get a taste for it. In the second episode, we will talk about the book with full spoilers, and you have that fortnight in between to catch up with us. I'm Louise, and I have a YouTube channel over at Foxes and Fairy Tales. My favourite genres are fantasy, cosy mystery, and a dash of romance.
And I'm Susan. You can find me most places at Does Susan Write? The answer is no, by the way. I read fairly similar genres to Louise, but I also do read quite a lot of non-fiction as well. If you don't already know, the premise of Plot Luck podcast is that Louise and I have fairly different tastes in our books, and when we do agree, it's not for the same reason. You can find all our links in the description.
For our first episode, we are going to be talking about The Favourites by Layne Fargo. This is a coming-of-age story set in the world of competitive ice dancing. I was actually the one who picked this book for our first ever episode, and my reasoning for this one was that I actually thought it might be one we both enjoyed. The book I had saw all over social media and it was really hyped. I didn't know much about it, but they did mention that it had a kind of obsessive type of love story, which is far more my vibe than something that's flowers and hearts romantic. I also thought it was one that would appeal to Susan because it has a sports angle, which I know she's very interested in, and she also loves everything that's kind of gossip girl, messy relationships, and all that celebrity drama. So I thought this was a nice intersection of the two things.
Yes, and thank you for that, Louise, because I do love all of those things. So just going to tell you a little bit more about the book without any spoilers. Everyone thinks Heath Rocha was my first love. He wasn't. My first love was figure skating. Katerina Shaw has always known that she's destined to become an Olympic skater. When she meets Heath Rocha, a lonely kid stuck in the foster care system, their instant connection makes them a formidable duo on the ice. Clinging to their skating and each other to escape their turbulent lives, Kat and Heath go from childhood sweethearts to champion ice dancers, captivating fans with their scorching chemistry, rebellious style, and roller coaster relationship. Until, at the Olympic Games, as the world holds its breath, a shocking incident instantly destroys their partnership. 10 years later, an unauthorised tell-all documentary reignites the public obsession with Shaw and Rocha. If Kat wants to own her story, she must break her silence. As Kat's account of her dramatic rise and fall alternates with the scandalous interviews from the film, The Favourite spins into a dance between passion, ambition, and what it truly means to win. Sensational rumours have haunted Kat and Heath's every step for years, but the truth may be even more outrageous than the headlines. So, Louise, when I read the blurb, I was like, yes, this book is just for me. Thank you so much. But something I'm really interested in is, what is your experience with ice dancing? Can you tell me what it is?
My experience with ice dancing is nothing at all. I don't know anything about ice dancing. I don't even know if ice dancing's different from figure skating.
So, I did do a little bit of research on this, and it is different from figure skating. Basically, ice dancing is more like ballroom dancing, but on the ice. So the lifts that you do, there are certain rules about what you are allowed to do. Whereas with figure skating, it's a bit more dramatic and you can do higher lifts, more dangerous lifts. Whereas I think in ice dancing, it's a lot of the kind of dancing technique.
So more conservative maybe as a sport.
Possibly.
Which I do think maybe then came through a bit in the book. There was an element of that, wasn't there?
Yes, I think maybe more of an art-based sport, whereas I think figure skating is about the technique predominantly, and it can maybe not look as pretty.
Right. The only kind of ice sport media that I know anything about is, have you ever seen Yuri on Ice?
No.
It's amazing. It's like a one-season anime that's set during an ice, I think that one's figure skating, but God knows, competition. And the only context it gave me on this is sometimes when she talked about certain competition names that have strange kind of names or names that's done it, then I'd go, oh, I've heard of that. Was literally all I had for context.
It's more than some.
It's not bad, but other than that, my only ice skating is like as a 5-year-old falling on the ice with the little penguins you hold on to as you go around the kiddie ice rink.
Yeah, I mean, I have no personal experience with ice dancing because staying on my feet is hard enough. I can't even imagine trying to dance at all. However, saying that, I do like quite a lot of sports, especially sports where there's a lot of gossip. And for me, ice dancing has had its own scandals. There was fairly recently a film made about one of the biggest scandals, which involved two rival skaters, and Margot Robbie played one of them. I haven't seen the film, but I remember the story from the time. And then there was another scandal, maybe about 20 years ago, where one of the judges was actually corrupt and accepted bribes to give more points to one country and less points to another country. I can't remember the countries involved, so I wouldn't want to guess and make accusations anywhere. But there's also a lot of glamour. It is a sport where there are a lot of gay men who participate in, but there's also a lot of gay men who have participated over the years who have been closeted throughout their career until they have maybe retired. And obviously times are changing as well. So I've always been attracted, as I said, I love sports that have gossip attached. So for me, I know a bit about ice dancing and I've watched a bit of ice dancing, but I'm not an expert in any way, shape or form.
So you're not an expert in ice dancing, shockingly. Which sports would you consider yourself not an expert, but a gossip expert in?
Do you know, a lot of sports have a gossip angle to them. You have the sort of individual sports where you've got rivalries and friendships and frenemyships. And then you have team sports where you have inter-team relationships, which sometimes can be good, sometimes can be bad, and other times can be pretty explosive, depending on the circumstances. So for anyone who knows me, knows I am currently obsessed with women's football. I'm actually part of a community interest company, Women's Football Hub, look us up. And we look at the sort of evidence-based side of football and how to reduce barriers for people to get into football and to stay in football, because obviously people get injured quite a lot. I would say at the moment there's a huge sort of gossip community surrounding women's football. It's a bit parasocial, to be honest. There's like a lot of people who are obsessed with who's going out with who, which you don't see on the men's side because you don't get openly gay male footballers, you know. So there's a lot of that kind of teenage behaviour where, like, I had posters of Oasis on my wall. They have posters of the footballers, but also make TikToks speculating about their private lives and things, which I think is a step too far. I much prefer the who's friends with who, or like what sponsorships they're doing, or what parties they're going to. So that would be for me at the moment, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I remember, obviously, I'm shockingly, as I've just said, not into sports, so I'm not a big football fan. But like, I nowadays don't seem to notice as much gossip around men's football as there used to be. I definitely remember when I was kind of in that like high school era, which we won't put a number on. Wags, the footballers' wives things, was such a huge thing. There was TV shows, like it was an entirely fictional TV show, was it not? Footballers' Wives was how it kicked off, and the wives and girlfriend, the wags thing was like they were the celebrity it people of that era. You had obviously like Victoria Beckham and Cheryl Cole, things like that. That doesn't seem to be, obviously the footballers now still have wags and like have wives and girlfriends still, but the level of, I guess, like press intrusion on their lives doesn't seem, from a kind of layman's point of view, doesn't seem to be as extreme as it was for that period.
Do you know, I have a couple of theories about this. So I think the rise of social media has meant that a lot of people have more control over their image. So there's slightly less of that sort of celebrity led by the paparazzi, say, and the kind of gossip media. So I think that's part of it. Another part is, I think actually women's football has grown. So a lot of younger girls maybe who would be interested in the wags are now actually interested in the players. So they have got those role models who are there. And I think, I mean, I need to say it, I'm sorry, but the whole Wagatha Christie, I feel kind of was an end point for wag culture. I know wag culture it was a lot less than it had been, 15 years ago. But I do feel like the Wagatha Christie was kind of a message to everybody.
I still haven't watched that, the actual show, the documentary, but it does seem like something I would be like, that's something Susan would watch.
Oh, there was
that's something Susan would be obsessed with.
So yes, when it came out, I was like, oh, Colleen Roney, you go girl. But there was actually a podcast, I think it was on the BBC, and it was one of the reporters was in court, and then every day she would do an episode, and I listened to every single episode of the Wagatha Christie trial. And I mean, it was just, what a time. What a time. However, I think as well, there weren't many of the wives and girlfriends who had careers that put them in the public eye.
Yeah, I mean, it was very much, a 1% type thing. Like I say, the one I remember kind of kicking it off with would be Victoria Beckham, who arguably at the time was at least as famous as David Beckham, if not more so. Spice Girls in their heyday.
She was much more successful. She was much richer, because in those days, although footballing was a really well-paid career, it was Posh and Becks who kicked off a lot of the brand partnerships to the level that they took it, brand Beckham. That wasn't a thing before. So that was kind of the start and the end, maybe.
And then I kind of remember, like, again, if I know about it, then it was very kind of like general knowledge. The kind of Cheryl Cole was, I would say, maybe like the next generation of that. Mm-hmm. And it almost feels, tying it into like reading, it almost feels like, in Game of Thrones, when they talk about having the queen and then the younger queen that will come and usurp her. I kind of always got that kind of dynamic from, like, you had Posh Spice and then you had these younger wags that were clearly kind of angling for her spot as David Beckham started to age out of football. Mm-hmm. And it was more about the girlfriends. Like, I honestly, without putting too much thought into it, probably couldn't tell you who Cheryl Cole had been married to at the time.
Ashley Cole.
Yeah, like, you know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't...
I think she just goes by Cheryl now.
Yeah. But, like, she, to me, was, again, the bigger name in that partnership than he was.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think the media made it look as though the two of them kept themselves separate from the others. But actually, when you look at the age that Victoria Beckham was, she must have been in her 30s with young children, and some of these girls were 17. Like, when you actually think about it, well, at my age, when I was early 30s, did I want to be hanging about with people who were still at school? Unless I was getting paid, I did used to be a teacher, by the way, then the answer is no. Like, I would only be spending time with family or in my professional work with children. I wouldn't be wanting to hang about with them and get papped.
But yeah, thinking about it that way, I guess you can see where the idea that you could make a story out of, okay, we're talking about football, but I guess you can see where that would come from, because, like, I'm saying it reminds me of Game of Thrones with the queens kind of taking each other's position. Also, I guess, like, the, old school Hollywood thing of, like, the aging actresses trying to shunt younger actresses out because they don't want to lose their time in the spot. Like, there is a lot of that, I guess, going on in the same world. There's that. It's not the same, but it's a similar type of rivalry and drama, which feeds into a lot of things that we do use in stories repeatedly.
Yeah, I think the kind of evil stepmother.
Which this one, again, The Favourites pulls that trope in. It's kind of interesting when you break it down that, there's a lot of kind of universal elements.
Which it's the sort of the universal, they work in stories because there's an element of truth in them.
Not to drag us kicking and screaming back to The Favourites, but talking about the celebrity culture, the media, the paparazzi, that kind of thing, does tie in nicely to the actual structure of the prose, the novel itself, without even getting into the plot and the characters. The Favourites, for anyone that hasn't read it yet, is laid out in sort of a dual narrative. In kind of one element of the book, we have Kat telling her story from, the current day, looking back. But we also have that interspersed with the documentary that's mentioned in the summary, the kind of tell-all behind the scenes. and we get slightly different angles on events depending on whether we're getting Kat's point of view or we're getting what this media company is producing. So, Susan, do you want to talk about the mixed media elements of this for a little bit?
I would love to talk about mixed media because I love a mixed media book. I think from the cover of the book, the comps are Taylor Jenkins Reid. And yeah, Taylor Jenkins Reid has written a number of books that follow a slightly different mixed formula. I think we both read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo.
We both read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, yeah. And what I think, I know I keep on almost acting as if this book was written by Taylor Jenkins Reid because it is very in her wheelhouse.
Same.
As a kind of slightly bigger name. But what I noticed when reading this, and it's the exact same that I had in Evelyn Hugo, was when I read Evelyn Hugo, I would get to moments where I kind of thought, oh, I'm maybe going to like Wikipedia Evelyn Hugo's films and I'll watch some of them. And then I would have to be like, no, she's not real. And I had a few moments like that in this where I'd be like, oh, I wonder what that person looks like now. And it's like, no, you can't actually Google Ellis Dean. He's not a person.
We might come back to that in the spoiler section because I believe some characters are combinations of actual ice dancers.
Which is interesting. I think how Layne Fargo has managed to, like you say, if you're taking composites of real people and still making them recognisable to people that know, but also as someone who, and we'll get to again, we'll talk about this a bit later, that this is a very, very reimagined Wuthering Heights retelling. The characters are also very clearly, but very differently, the characters they are in Wuthering Heights. And how she's managed to take those two very different things and make the character very clearly both of them speaks to like an awful lot of work at the character building stage that just, as someone who's tried to do writing at various points, blows my mind.
And if you are someone like me who has never read Wuthering Heights, you didn't have your mind blown in quite the same way because you didn't know there was another layer to all of these characters.
We'll get to that when we come off mixed media. We will go back and we will talk about my revelation.
This is a spoiler-free,
yes.
But it's spoiler-free for the favourites. We are okay with spoiling classics, just as a side note there.
If it's been out more than 200 years, I feel like maybe it's you can wiki that.
Yeah, and I mean, I haven't read it, but I'm also not going to read it because I would have read it at some point before now if I was going to. There's so many books
also
in the world.
There's books where they're like they're classics because they're old and they're relatively obscure, and then there's classics that are so well known that they're referenced in The Simpsons. They're referenced in so much pop culture that I honestly don't think you can spoil them. Even if you don't know.
You can, because I know nothing.
Yeah, but like...
Apart from a Kate Bush song.
But that's what I mean. Like, I think that there's so much that you just... that the stories kind of become like, you'll read... If you're going to read it, you'll read it knowing how it ends, and it doesn't... That's not really why you're reading it.
So just coming back around to other books with mixed media, we talked about one Taylor Jenkins Reid book, but Taylor Jenkins Reid plays with the structure of her books. One of my favourite Taylor Jenkins Reids is Daisy Jones and the Six, which is literally written as if it's like a Rolling Stone profile. So, and it's an entire book, and I loved it. Again, loosely based on Fleetwood Mac. So if you love any of the lore and their performances, it's actually quite an engaging read. And then other books that she has written, Malibu Rising, which is about siblings. So there's some common themes in there. It's written from multiple perspectives. And the other book, and this is probably the one that's the most similar, Carrie Soto is Back, in terms of themes, because Carrie Soto is a tennis player who has a dream to win, I want to say, the US Open or Wimbledon, a dream to win something. And without giving too many spoilers away, she's very successful, but she hasn't won that something. And then the story takes off from there. So there were similarities in terms of like characterization and events and side characters. You know, there were coaches and relationships with other competitors. So I think, I mean, it's on the front of the book. Taylor Jenkins Reid is the...
Yeah, and from what I have read, like only that I've obviously only read the one Taylor Jenkins Reid, but from that book and from just the general vibes, I do think that Layne Fargo is probably in that very, very similar wheelhouse. If you like one, you're probably going to like the other.
Yeah, I would say so. There are other books though that are mixed media that I've really enjoyed. One is a standalone young adult book called Sadie, and it's really interesting. It's done as a series of podcast episodes, interspersed with the namesake Sadie, investigating her sister's disappearance. And that was probably the first mixed media book I read, and I just loved it. It ticked a few boxes: true crime, podcast, young adult, mystery. I do like all those things. But another author I know that we've both read something from is Janice Hallett. She really experiments with.
Yeah, she goes a lot more, I don't want to say hardcore, but like her mixed media, Janice Hallett only talks in mixed media. There's no prose at all. And it's all different types of media. I mean, the ones I've read, they mixed email snippets. There was text chains. There's, sometimes voicemail transcripts. She writes entirely in kind of almost like found footage. Mm-hmm. So like it takes it to an extreme.
It does. But I love it.
I think, we can talk about as well obviously that is the mixed media being part of this book, but what that achieves within the book, mm-hmm. I've thought, and I think it works as well with, like, we're talking about Janice Hallett, it keeps the pacing really, really brisk. It keeps you turning the pages. It probably helps that the chapters in this are fairly short as well.
Yeah, that was on my things I loved about this book.
Yeah. So having it flip between the kind of the transcript and the prose, and it done that fairly often.
I think it was every chapter.
Gave you a real sense of that page turner-iness.
Yes, and I think each chapter, it was like an isolated. It wasn't a kind of meandering. It was like, this chapter is about this competition. And then we move on to like a documentary section, and then we moved on to the next part. So it kind of, the documentary parts broke up and moved the story along.
Yeah, where it felt natural.
Yeah.
And also, I guess, as well, having it be about sports and a sport that has a lot of competitive aspects, so a lot of competitions, it gives you a nice sense of structure for the book, the same way that like lots of books that have trials or competitions, they tend to have maybe 3 rounds because they fit the 3-act structure really well. And this does that as well, that, like you're saying, that you can be like, this chapter's about this competition, this chapter's about the aftermath of that competition. It just gave you a nice kind of structure for her working through, which I felt like it kept the book moving. Whereas, going back to the original one, it's a long book. It's a long, meandering book.
Definitely not going to read it.
I definitely feel for like a modern audience, but also just for like the genre this is in. It's all about glitz and glam and quite paciness. You had to find a way to make Wuthering Heights move faster, and I think she does that really, really well.
I think as well, ice dancing's quite a short career.
Yeah, I would imagine. It's pretty intense.
You're 25 and done pretty much. So I think having the story move so rapidly kind of gave a sense of that time pressure almost.
Yeah, I definitely think the pace being fast works with the kind of theme of the book, I guess. It wouldn't have worked, I don't think, as well if it was quite one of those kind of like dragged out, slowy, purple, prosy, fluey type of books.
100%.
It just wouldn't have worked.
The other thing as well, I guess, is some sports can last for hours, but ice dancing is 4 minutes.
Yeah. And it gives you that really intense, to the characters, obviously their lives are so intense and so pressure cookery, both the competition aspect in the sports, but also that romantic relationship between them. The whole thing is so like intense. And I think having the really fast pace makes you feel slightly almost claustrophobic in their world, which adds to that feeling that they have as well, that one, in a literal sense, everyone is watching them all the time. But
from all angles.
Yeah, from all angles.
As well.
They've got literally people watching them. They've got the kind of gossip, the journalists stalking
even
them.
Just the TV cameras.
Their coaches, their competitors, all that sort of thing. And then also within, obviously, themselves, they have that kind of the pressure cooker relationship and their interpersonal relationships and whether they're going well or not. I think the way the book was written, in terms of using that mixed media, tied into then the pacing, which tied into, it was really just nicely done. I thought the mixed media really helped set the kind of all the themes of the book set off really well by it.
Totally agree. And if we did have video, you would see me nodding so hard my headphones almost fell off there, because I agree with everything you just said. I think the pacing of the book was pretty solid.
Yeah, I think it was a really good choice. So that little note about pacing in Wuthering Heights, I'm just going to steal the microphone for a bit and talk about. I know you really don't have much to contribute on this one.
I have nothing.
Yeah, so Wuthering Heights, this is a retelling of Wuthering Heights, and I'm going to steal the limelight for a minute because when I was a teenager, I was obsessed with Wuthering Heights. It's the goth. I don't think it's going to surprise Susan to hear me here. It's the gothic child.
I just
classic.
honestly, I have just this image of you because we didn't know each other at this age because I'm a little bit older. I just have this image of little Louise, dressed to the nines, fully in black, maybe some taffeta,
all the black eyeliner.
Your hair maybe black or purple.
I think it was every colour it could be at different points. At one point I had blue on my parents' white sofa and they were not impressed.
I can imagine. But I can also like just imagine your like scowling face. Maybe with like a fake piercing somewhere.
I had I still have very resting face. Anyway, so yeah, Wuthering Heights is very much the goth child of the classics world. I will say up there with Frankenstein. Like Frankenstein, obviously you're going more into sci-fi and true horror, but Wuthering Heights of the kind of not genre fiction classics, I think is very much the kind of the broody child. If you have, Pride and Prejudice is very romantic and happy, Wuthering Heights is damaged people. Wuthering Heights often gets written as a romance, and you talk about Heathcliff as being the romantic hero. Wuthering Heights is not. Wuthering Heights is a bunch of people who are all consistently terrible, being affected by this person who is even worse, to a level that he ruins their lives with the purpose of this revenge, this obsession with bringing people down, spiraling down into the next generation. But what's really funny, right, is that I don't know, it does say on my copy of the book, on the front cover, it says part Wuthering Heights, part, but I kind of thought it was a comp title the way you always get comp titles, and that doesn't mean it's actually retelling. And despite this level of obsession that I had, and as a teenager I was obsessed, I watched the Cliff Richard Heathcliff musical multiple times. That, I don't know if I deserve an award or some kind of therapy, but like, that's a level of obsession.
I think maybe both.
Yeah. So when I say I was into Wuthering Heights, I was into Wuthering Heights. I got about 25% through this book before I realised it was a Wuthering Heights retelling. And then I was lying in bed and it hit me like a lightning strike when I went, their names are practically the same names. Catherine is Katerina, Heath is Heathcliff. Even the brother, who in Wuthering Heights is Hindley, is Lee. Then we have Isabella, Bella, Edgar, Garrett. I know that one's a bit hinky.
Similar letters.
You have Ellis Dean, who is Ellen Dean, who is the person that tells the story, obviously then is the gossip columnist. Like, it's very on the nose as soon as you clock it. But I did not clock it. And then I spent the next kind of chapter, although I was enjoying the book, I did spend the next time doing that little matchy, going, that's that character, which changed what I then thought some of the elements of the plot would be without giving them away. I had some kind of like, obviously going into the book, some kind of guesses about what the trajectory of the story would be. And then once I knew it was Wuthering Heights, I started to like maybe adjust those based on where we were in Wuthering Heights. And then as we continued reading it, whether it went that way or didn't. So it was a whole journey for me.
That sounds like another layer to reading that sounds exhausting, to be perfectly honest.
But anyway, so Wuthering Heights was one of my favourites as a teenager. I think it really does appeal to a specific type of teenager, what we say, when it's that like dark, broody, gothic, no one understands me. Those themes of like obsession and ambition, and the way ambition is treated in this in Wuthering Heights, obviously it's not sports ambition, it's very like social ambition and what you can achieve and what you're willing to sacrifice to achieve those things, what other people are going to think of you when you do. And I think that was really interesting, how nowadays we maybe wouldn't feel relevant, but overlaying it on sports, it kind of just, it makes perfect sense that, again, you're talking about ambition, you're talking about obsession, you're talking about drive, which then pulls it a lot more into your arena, obviously, of the sports world.
Yeah, and I think looking at the various characters in this book and their passion and their drive and their motivation, it did read fairly true to competitive athletes. Again, what I know from the outside, I have and never will be a competitive
I would
athlete.
love if that was the like spoiler, or not spoiler, like Easter egg secret that came out of our very first ever podcast episode, is like Susan's secretly this well-known Olympic athlete and this is her like pseudonym slash alter
Can you
ego.
imagine? No.
Like
I've
the
not,
Clark Kent of women's football and podcasting.
unfortunately, no. I don't have this drive that other people do. I hate competitive sports as a human being taking part in, but I do enjoy watching and reading about. So I think it is that you see athletes all the time and what they push through. Thinking back to the Olympics, one of the gymnasts from the USA actually broke her ankle and then went back and did a second vault. You know,
I don't have that. I definitely don't have that. Even, when people talk about there being like, oh, if there was a zombie apocalypse and like people that prep for these things. And I'm like, honestly, I wouldn't. I would just see if it was difficult, I wouldn't do it. I would eat the tinned food in my cupboard until Netflix went down, and then I would just wait for the zombies to arrive, because see if it's a certain amount of effort, I'm just going to decide not to. The idea of like, oh, competing on a broken leg, I'd be like, no, I'm sorry, I done my part, I'm done. And I get that that's why I would be a terrible athlete, because they have to push themselves and they want to get those medals, that recognition, whereas I am naturally lazy and would kind of go, you know what, I had a good run, I'm happy to take the silver, I'm gonna go home.
Yeah, I mean, I think a fair play award is an achievement, personally. So obviously, most athletes do actually have this drive. And where it comes from, I don't know. It's one of those things that for every single athlete, it'll come from somewhere different. But you see a lot of time, I know I'm going to harp on about women's football again, I'm really sorry, but I was at the Euros in the summer and it was amazing. But you see one of the players, Lucy Bronze, at the end, after winning the tournament, was like, oh yeah, I've got a fractured leg, I've been playing on it all tournament. And I mean, if I had a fractured leg, I'd be
go
like,
home.
I am off work. I am doing zero work. I'm going to eat a lot of ice cream, but I'm going to get someone to deliver it to my bed because I've got a broken leg. Yay!
I was going to say the exact same thing. See, as soon as you said she had a fractured leg, I was like, Ben and Jerry's on the couch, blanket up over my shoulders, watching all the car crash TV, shoveling sweets into my mouth.
100%.
I absolutely would not be running around a pitch getting tackled by 12 other people.
I think your Netflix and ice cream is just their winning. I mean, it's compatible, surely.
They're like, what I want in life is to achieve this thing. And I'm like, what I want in life is to sit and ideally eat sugar while doing nothing.
Yeah, while being entertained without having to use any of my brain. So I just think that's such a fascinating psychological phenomenon, I guess. I do have a good friend who was an ex-semi-pro athlete, and I can see the drive and the determination and that they apply to the different things that they're working on or that they want to achieve. And it's just like a different breed of human. But you see that, and I think having throughout the book, without giving spoilers away, it says in the blurb the Olympic gold medal is the dream. It's like the kind of lifetime ambition, which again, ice dancing is early 20s and you retire. It's a really short term life's ambition. You've only got a small window of time to achieve it.
You have to do it quickly. You don't, I guess, have a lot of time to trial and error and to grow gradually. You have to, like, I mean, it happens we introduce them very young and everything. You have to hit the ground running. Mm-hmm. All the characters that are kind of in their little cohort are very much doing that. They are like, we are here very young. We are going for it straight away. There's no kind of like, I'll try this year, we'll see how it goes. When we try next year, we'll build up over time. It's very intense. And I suppose that also fits the kind of the story with them being all relatively young. It fits that, as I was in the kind of drama of the heightened emotions.
I mean, again, without giving spoilers away, a lot of it is high school drama.
Yeah, very much so.
But then you're like, these are professional athletes who are doing a job all day, every day, but their peers are at school.
Yeah.
Being driven about by their parents and fed by their parents and things. It's just that, their nutrition is now part of their job. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting as well, you saying about that they tend to not crash out, but their careers naturally kind of hit a point in their mid-20s. But it was interesting having the transcripts. So we were very... I know that Kat's part is being told from the current day as well, but it feels more in the moment because it's prose, whereas the transcripts definitely were talking about events that had passed. It was quite interesting to then see some of those characters and what they have managed to parlay their athletic career into in different ways. We got to see, you know, as they were older, the different routes they could take, the different routes that athletes can take once they retire from the sport. You've obviously got all that years of experience and you still have that drive, but physically you're maybe not up to the same level as someone who's in their prime. What do you do with all that skills and knowledge?
Do you know, I think that's actually a really good point to pause our spoiler-free conversation because what comes after the athlete's career, obviously, it does actually tell us in the book. So I think if we said any more on this matter, we would be approaching spoiler.
So we'll call it
I think we should call it a day on
that.
Excellent.
Well, thank you for listening to this very first ever episode of the Plot Luck podcast. As we said, this one was as spoiler-free as we could make it, but in a fortnight we will be coming back. We will be talking about The Favourites by Layne Fargo again, but we will be going full spoilers. We will not be taking any prisoners. We will talk about everything and anything we want to in this book. So if you have not read it yet and you want to, please do join us in a fortnight and hear all our different thoughts.
You can find us on Spotify, YouTube, and all the podcasting apps of choice. We've also put links to all our social media, etc., in our description. So make sure to give us a follow. Feel free to like and comment, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.